Steelseries sent over their QcK Prism. This is a, well, yet another RGB mousepad. If you've seen Razer or Corsair's edition, then you will know that this is a fairly, I suppose, superfluous item that may not necessarily be, well, necessary for a lot of people. This one is pretty interesting though, as well it is RGB, it's also dual-sided, which is a sort of world's first, as they'd like to put it on the box. So you have a speed side and a control side, so basically a more sort of plastic side and a more sort of cloth side that you can actually switch over pretty easily and does make for a rather interesting gaming experience. As you can see, outside the box you have just the mousepad itself and the USB wire. It's not a braided wire either, which, considering this is a relatively high-priced mouse mat, would be quite nice to see. And also, the first thing that will happen when you plug it into the computer is probably this. Okay, so let's just install the... Why does a mousepad have a firmware update? Yeah, it seems pretty strange to me that mousepads have firmware updates, but nonetheless, it is still a functional mousepad in itself. It's actually a pretty decent size. I tried using the Steelseries Rival 700 on it as well, as you can see, and it does actually look pretty nice. There's lots of effects that you can do for the mousepad, and while I'm not someone who actually uses a mousepad on a regular basis, the fact that you can switch it over to have a cloth surface, which for me is a little bit nicer than the more plastic speed surface, but obviously that does depend on what game you're playing and what sort of feel you like best, so it is nice to have that customizability. The lighting effects in general are pretty cool. It seems a little bit limited. I think there's total 12 lighting zones, and you can make them do different things. There are some preset effects and there are some sort of custom options as well. Fairly easy to use. Obviously it's the Steelseries engine, so again, a pretty just overall easy to use bit of software. And I think you can also do like audio mode and stuff like that if you're actually wanting to, you know, completely distract yourself from the video game that you're playing, and otherwise it is still a pretty good looking device. Obviously that's its main function, with its, I suppose, actually secondary function now being to be still a pretty good mousepad. Because the entire bottom of the mousepad is just a sticky rubber surface, it really doesn't move around at all, so you really don't have too much trouble with that. And somewhat surprisingly, even though the actual mousepad surface itself is pretty thin, so there's not much sort of squidge to it, and because there is actually a rubber surface inset into the mousepad, it actually doesn't move around at all inside its own sort of housing, even though it's not clipped in or, you know, really secured in any way other than just sort of friction fit, so that is also pretty nice. So is it worth going RGB all the things on your mouse mat too? Well, I think that really varies on what you're after. If you're after a very stylistic and actually fairly versatile thanks to its double-sidedness, then this is a pretty good mouse mat to go for. It is still relatively expensive in the grand scheme of mouse mats, but of course, if you're after a fairly large mouse mat, this one isn't too big. I mean, it's certainly decent enough, and you will likely have no trouble doing your CSGO flick shots or whatever on it. But if you're after, you know, something that's a little bit bigger, if you're after something that's a little bit softer, or just something that fits your needs better, then you might want to go for something a little bit cheaper and bigger and better for you than this one. I think in terms of scoring, because apparently I have to score this product, it's going to be a 4 for 5 money. I think in terms of performance, because of its versatility in the control versus speed side and its overall decent size, it's probably going to be a 5 for performance for me, especially on the control side of things. That's where my personal preference sits. I think in terms of functionality, it's RGB, it's mouse mat. I'd probably go with maybe a 4.5 because there's no braided cable on it, but otherwise it's actually pretty good. Style, of course, has to be a 5, and TechteamGB score, I think a 4.5 and a gold award. So if you're after RGB all the things and your mouse mat, then feel free to take a look at the price, when and where you watch this, and the links in the description down below. Also feel free to support me using the Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links. It really does help me out and keeps me making these videos on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and occasionally Saturday, and occasionally some days in between as well. So please do use those, and the TechteamGB merch link as well. There's TechteamGB stuff and there's general just funny tech stuff, so feel free to take a look at that too. I'd also really appreciate it if you subscribe and share the video as well. Those both also definitely help. And of course, subscribe, like, and leave a comment and all that jazz. I'll leave some other videos here for you if you want to check out some other interesting peripherals or other videos, and of course the subscribe button on this side. And yeah, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in the next video.